Welcome back to the Mining Your Business podcast, a show all about process mining, data science, and advanced business analytics. My name is Patrick Bachner, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Lindsay Ryan. How are you doing?
I'm great, and I'm excited to be here today with you.
That sounds great. So am I. Today, we're going to be talking about failure. We have a combined 10 years of experience and have seen some implementations go awry.
I think a lot of them, in fact, can be going off the tracks and then brought back. And with all of this experience, I think we're in a really good spot to talk about what the common failures are and what you can do to really avoid them. So in this episode today, we're going to go through each phase of our typical project methodology. What are the common pitfalls and what you can do to avoid your next process intelligence project turning into a colossal failure.
Okay, let's get into it.
We're talking about how to fail at process mining.
Yes.
And probably in order to make this a consumable and logical discussion,
Yes.
rather than us just saying, what about that? Which admittedly
Could be fun.
I was thinking we would go through it in the chronological order of a standard process mining implementation project.
Sure.
Where we have the preparation phase, scoping, implementation, validation, and then a sort of go live, rollout, follow on, pretty much whatever happens after this initial implementation phase. And for each of these project phases, we will talk about our lessons learned, what to do to fail at process mining.
Or
and how,
I guess not to fail.
Ideally, I mean, yeah, but how to fail sounds a little bit punchier.
No, that's true. Yeah. So, dear listeners, if you are noticing during the course of this, these types of conversations that you resonate with some of these, hopefully you will have some tips on how to get yourself out of this situation if we do our job correctly, right? So, why are we talking about this? I think it's quite important to understand why certain projects inside process intelligence are not as successful as they could be, or sometimes downright just fail altogether. And I think it's good to dissect these problems so that when they come again, or at least in our profession, when we see clients heading down the similar path, we can say, stop, we've been here before, we know how this works, we know how this is going to end up, let's do something else.
Or if you're in a position where you're implementing multiple projects, even if you're not a consultant like we are, if you're a COE lead, or you're about to start on a implementation project of your own, your first, your second, your third, I think that all of these little nuggets of wisdom can be applied and can make a difference in order to make sure that you're making the best out of the resources, the significant resources that you're investing into your process mining initiative.
For sure. Shall we get into number one?
Number one. Okay, so now we are in the pre-project and preparation phase. This is, I would say, the time when management is saying, all right, let's do process mining.
So we have buy-in already.
Yeah, there's some sort of buy-in somewhere. You have a Celonis license, and you're kind of putting together, what are we going to do? That is the pre-project, the preparation. I think one of the main points, one of the very first points that you called out when we were preparing for this episode was about the objective.
Yes. So this is a big thing that I notice in a lot of initial conversations that you have when, like you said, this project is set to go and you have a conversation with what the goals are, right? What do they want to achieve, right? What do they see? What do they want to have done at the end of this project? What should they be able to do at the end of this project that they aren't able to do now, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, the first thing that you hear is, we want transparency. And as soon as I hear the word transparency, I shiver a little bit, right?
In a good way or a bad way?
In a bad way, let me say, in a very bad way. Because don't get me wrong, transparency is good, right? It's always good to have some sort of idea of what your processes are doing. That's fantastic. However, transparency is not going to get you there. By there being, you show some sort of return on investment on this software solution that you have just purchased. Because keep in mind, these licenses can be expensive, specifically when you're talking about a big company with a lot of data. Those licenses can get quite expensive. Our services, if you happen to use a partner when implementing these things, also not the cheapest thing in the world, right? So at some point, someone's going to ask, someone has bought in, and then they're going to say, okay, well, how much did we save by buying this? And if you say, well, now we have transparency.
Yeah. Is transparency going to pay the bills this month?
Transparency will not pay the bills.
Yeah.
Right. So this is one of the main things that always ring my alarm bells when I hear transparency. I always try and pivot to there has to be something else that we can tackle. There has to be some sort of thing that we can focus on other than transparency to fix some sort of strategic issue.
I think that there's a lot of projects that I've worked on where it feels almost like a luxury, where there isn't this pressure to produce some sort of monetary value, or there isn't this urgency to deliver an impact, which feels like a luxury because you don't have this stress weighing on you of, I have to get something out of this. But at the same time, that is a golden cage of sorts, where then at a certain point, without having that pressure to do something, you are really losing the push. And maybe right now, business is great. You've got tons of money. Everyone's doing these interesting projects just to benefit business. But there is almost always a time in any economic situation where things can change. And if you have had a process mining initiative going on for years and you don't actually have a significant value to show for it, when it becomes a discussion of, okay, guys, we got to cut costs, we got to trim down here. If you don't have anything to show for it, that can be really challenging. And maybe it wasn't a priority before, but it becomes a priority at some point. Maybe under bad circumstances, maybe under positive circumstances, but having that value to justify a project initiative is critical. I think the other part of it is not just about what you're achieving, but how you're getting there. That transparency is really hard to define as a deliverable.
Yes.
Because then anything you do, anything at all that you implement in process mining
is technically fulfilling that goal.
Is more transparency. But then you don't really have this northern star that you're working towards of what's actually a useful outcome. What are we going to do with it? And if you just say, oh, well, we want to achieve transparency, then you can get a whole lot of nothing at the end. And that can be extra frustrating.
This is also something that I've heard recently come up more and more, the talk of the digital twin, right? Digital twin is kind of akin to transparency in it's nice to have, but what do you want to do with it? Why do you need a digital twin?
Yeah.
Right? What are you trying to achieve with it? The point is not to have a digital twin. It's the fact that with the digital twin, you can actually do something else.
Yeah.
Right? So that I think is also lacking in a lot of places.
Is it, what's the meme? Step 1, transparency. Step 2, question mark. Step 3, profit.
Yeah, I think that kind of sums it up perfectly. Yes.
Yes. Don't do that. Have step 2 clearly defined. Transparency is a very valid first step, but there needs to be a step 2 in order to get to step 3 of profit.
Yeah. And you could also, sometimes I hear, well, we need this transparency to see where our problems are. Then I always think you just haven't looked into your own thing close enough.
Yeah.
Right? If you need that level of transparency to find problems, then either things are going really well for you because clearly you don't have that many problems that are noticeable or strategic enough that, they're not noticeable straight from the get-go. But it could even be something as, even if things are going great, you could still make the point that say, we want to focus in the next 3 years on getting out customer orders faster.
Yeah.
By whatever that is. We want to be better than our competition. We want to be able to reduce manual effort or at least the friction between customer and us as much as possible. That's what we want to focus on. Then that's a goal.
Yeah.
right? Then that's something that we can attach ourselves to, and we know exactly where to start looking.
Yeah.
Right.
And what we can do about it.
Exactly.
Okay, so I think you're already coming into one of the things that I want to make sure we hit.
Yes.
For each of our points of how to fail,
yes.
we also need to make sure that we include how to overcome these
yes.
potential failures. So,
yes. Sorry, jumped ahead. Got so excited.
You're good, yeah. You're such a positive, optimistic guy that you're just going directly for solutions.
I'm double glass full kind of
guy. So transparency is a good intermediary step. But you can overcome this challenge by, I liked your point of aligning it with a high-level top-down strategy to say that whatever the business goal is from a C-level perspective, that we are aligning what we are doing in our process mining initiative with this broader company-wide initiative. We are looking at actual pain points that we know are an issue. We talk to business, hear what they complain about, and then try and make that a part of our project. Any other tips?
I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. I think that's also then, I should have ordered the tips in a different order, because then it would have been the smoothest transition to problem number 2.
Problem number 2.
Problem number 2, which also comes up in your preparation phase, is about having this executive buy-in.
Yes.
Where you really need to get everyone on board with what you're about to do. And if you don't have everyone on board, then that can lead to some bumpy situations.
Would you care to elaborate on what a bumpy situation could look like?
I would say, especially in bigger corporations, bigger organizations where perhaps your Solonis initiative is being sponsored by business, but you need the support of IT to connect your systems, to actually enable additional technologies like the SAP write-back, clarify how your ERP systems are working, connections to other cloud systems, et cetera, et cetera. From my experience, IT is always really busy.
Yeah.
And I, to a reasonable extent, understand why they might be resistant to be connecting all kinds of random foreign softwares into their precious system that they spend all day, every day taking care of, maintaining, and preserving. But that also means that sometimes you need to get a data connection into Solonis, but IT says, well, we'll have actually capacity for that in a year and a half. True story, has happened multiple times. We'll get back to you in Q4 of next year. And then you're like, okay, well, do we put the project on hold, or what do we do about this? Because if we don't have that, how do we move forward? And that is one of the areas where having this high level sponsorship can be really, really helpful, because then you can run it up the chain and say, look, dear beloved C-level advisor of our project, you want process mining to succeed. We want process mining to succeed. We just need you to have a conversation with our beloved colleagues in IT and
lay that hammer down
and help us align our priorities.
Yes.
And that can make all the difference.
I think it was one of your projects or somebody else's where the similar thing happened. No capacity. We're busy with other things, blah, blah, blah. And then some C level got involved. And then the next day, literally, they were like, okay, we can do it this
tomorrow.
Week. It was the wildest thing,
Yeah. And I was like, that's where executive buy-in can be a game changer.
So true.
But if your executive doesn't understand what you're doing, doesn't support it, doesn't see the value behind it, then they're not going to be as amenable to coming in. And your term was laying down the hammer, throwing down the hammer. You need that. And so you need everyone to see what you're doing, to understand why it's important, and be on board. For even just one example with IT, which is also very relevant in the preparation phase. But I think in a number of other areas. Have you had other experiences where executive buy-in has been a deal breaker or game changer?
Yes. I think one of our clients, you can really much see the difference when there is executive buy-in and between that and no executive buy-in.
Yeah.
Because an executive that believes in what you're trying to achieve, one that sees the vision, sees the benefit, and this kind of ties back into the first point. It's so much easier to get that to come across, to get someone to believe in your vision if you can show them directly, hey, this aligns so well with the strategic thing that we're trying to do. This is helping us actively. And look, here you can even see how much to date it has helped us. Right then, that brings across that belief and that trust, right? And when you don't have that, once the mind is made up, there's almost fairly little that, at least in our position, that we can do.
Yeah.
And turns up on the chopping block.
Yeah. I think it's the equivalent of in your household, whichever parent was the more authoritative parent. Like maybe one parent is more likely to be nicer, to be softer about it.
The good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, but once bad cop says, this is what we're doing. If mom says we're going to bed at 9 p.m. tonight, then you're like, oh, okay, we're doing it.
Yeah.
And I've seen that play out professionally.
Oh,
where
really?
There's been a higher level management person where they say, we'll call our executive Patrick here. Be like, well, Patrick expects that we're going to deliver. And then everyone's like, oh, if Patrick says so, then we really got to do it. That you become then the professional boogeyman of sorts.
Is that a strategy that you would like to employ, that we push on some higher ups saying, well, they said that we need to do this just to
I would
favor
say,
a little bit more pressure?
It's not really, and that's a different episode of the challenges of being an external consultant.
True.
Is that it's a really challenging point for us to put pressure on people that we're working with. But if you make a commitment to someone's boss, and that boss is a powerful person that everyone respects and or is maybe somewhat even afraid of, ideally respects, then if that person then becomes the enforcer of the project. And that can also be really helpful when there's other challenges, which we'll get to then say, yeah, no, but this person expects results, so we got to deliver it. Otherwise, she's going to be upset. And that, I think, can be a key driver of outcomes.
So what's the solution?
The solution is, if the initiative doesn't come from the executives, which sometimes it does, then you need to have them regularly involved in your planning meetings to have updates, whether that's a QBR, a quarterly business review, whether that is through your kickoff and intermediary meetings throughout the project, which are a key part of our project methodology, to keep them informed and make sure they see the value of what you're going to deliver. So, anything to add?
No, nailed it.
Cool. Then we move on to our next project phase of scoping.
Can I throw one in ad hoc?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm ruining this list now.
Yeah.
We're going to do 2.5 now.
Yeah.
If we were talking about IT setup and things like that, with process mining software and things like that, typically, or at least data connections in general, once you have them set up, there's very little for IT to do. Typically, it's the beginning that's the most intense work for them, which honestly is not that much even.
Yeah.
Right? But once that's done, they can be very hands-off with this entire thing, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes restart a server occasionally or things like that. But other than that, nothing really much changes. So one thing that always helps, it's not like you failed the project completely, but we always argue that you should always have the data connection first before you do anything, right? Before you start talking to business about the goals and all these things, that comes only as soon as the data connection is done.
Yeah.
Data connection, I think we've said this on the show already tons of times. If the data connection isn't there, it can take a day up to 3 months.
I've seen it take a year.
See?
Seen it take a full calendar year.
Yeah.
No data connection, no kickoff.
Exactly. That's the rule that we try and go by, because nothing kills an initiative faster, or at least the fire, the motivation of the people. You have a kickoff and you're going to hear from us in 3 months again. before we can actually do anything.
Send that regular email and be like, hey, just hope
Yeah.
you're all doing well. Wanted to check in about the status of our data connection. Please let me
Correct.
know. And then nobody responds.
Yeah, correct. So not really relevant for people that are running their COEs and already have all these things, right? But for first-time implementations, I think it's worth mentioning that getting the technical part out of the way is the way.
Yep.
Is the way to go.
That's a good tip to add in there.
Now to number 3.
Now on to scoping.
Yes.
Cool. So we are in scoping, and this is the phase of the project where we are really defining our full set of deliverables. We are really looking at KPIs, at definitions of data. We're creating our solution delivery document that states every KPI, every filter, generally outlines the graphs, the charts, the workflows, all of the things that need to be in your solution.
Quite low level.
Yes.
As well as kind of high level,
high
right?
level and low level.
Yeah.
And ultimately in scoping, we don't necessarily put every single detail there. There's still some details that are to be figured out as you go. But it's really setting the plan and detailing it out a little bit more in depth than what you do before you start your project. And our main learning here is about how we integrate our end users.
I was going to say have another one.
Yeah? Oh, no. Mine, I think, is not just for scoping, but how you integrate the end users throughout the entire project.
Yes.
But is also important from the beginning. Yeah. So the end users are the people that are actually going to be logging into your tool and clicking around and consuming
the thing that you're creating, or that we are creating, or that you as a COE lead are creating. Right?
Whoever's doing it, whoever's making a dashboard, building a data pipeline, the end users are who you're making it for. And if you are not including them in the beginning, then there is a very high likelihood that your project will fail. That you are going to end up with, it might be, in fact, a really beautiful, eloquent, stunning, technologically advanced solution. This is a very reasonable outcome, but it might not actually help the problem that you're trying to solve. It might be a beautiful tool to do something else.
I've been in this project. This was my second project at this job.
Yeah.
Where I was talking to the project lead, and we weren't allowed to talk to business because they were handling it. Turns out nobody talked to business, right? So we were building KPIs that the users didn't care about. We were building dashboards the users didn't care about. And this went on for quite some time until somebody at the end of the project came along, and then it was time to actually show it to business. We weren't involved, of course.
Yeah.
Turns out business didn't care about a single thing we had done.
Oh.
Yeah, 3 months of work.
Yeah.
Down the drain. Nobody cared.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
That's really, really rough.
Nobody bothered to ask.
Yeah, you got to ask.
Yeah.
You got to find the right people to ask and make sure that you are working with them, that they're available, that they're interested, confirm that the problem is actually a valid problem for them, and confirm that whatever you're putting together inside of your process intelligence tool is something that will be usable, which can be a challenge, especially because a lot of times the end users are like, oh, good, another digital tool.
Add that to the list of 7 things I'm supposed to use.
Yeah. So it can be a challenge, and resource availability can be an issue, but it is really important, because if you don't have that input at the end, you can have something really nice that doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
And that's a failed project.
I've had a lot of things that I've built that I thought were amazing.
Yeah.
That did cool stuff. That I looked at, and the adoption rate was 0 users. And that made me cry a little bit.
Yeah.
Another point
Wait, hold on. if you go to another problem,
please.
we gotta stay on the structure, and that is, how do we fix this?
I'm getting so excited.
Just to be explicit, ignoring your end users is the problem, and the way to fix it is identify your end users, include them in the scoping, include them throughout the process of validating, defining what you're going to implement, and have a plan for how you're going to collect their inputs and how they're going to use it. Ideally, you build that throughout the entire project. Ideally,
Ideally.
You bring them as close to your implementation team as possible. If that's not possible, then at least you have a plan for having an intermediary person in your company who is collecting all of those inputs, synthesizing them, and communicating them in order to make sure that you're really aligning the needs and requirements of problem to solution.
And also prioritizing them.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people have some great ideas, but maybe, and again, this lines with point one, if they're not there to serve the strategic goal of what we're trying to achieve, maybe they get a lower priority, and we can get to it once the biggest priority, highest impact, lowest effort things are done.
Yeah. Okay. What was your, have you forgotten?
No.
Okay.
Can happen, but I didn't.
Okay.
So one of the things that I always look for is having a success criteria defined.
Mm-hmm.
Like we define a solution, but what are the acceptance criteria? Like when do they say you delivered on what you said you would?
Mm-hmm.
And we have to align on that, right? That has to be aligned.
So I would, to address that, I would say usually we have the solution delivery document where we are stating from the beginning, these are the KPIs, these are the functionalities, these are the core things. Is that sufficient, or are you thinking of something else?
No, I mean, it can be. But I think this also comes into our next topic, I think, is that maybe we should think about when we close off the project, or at least we consider it done, and that the client also considers it done.
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, you can write it down. Right. And yes, you can always point to a piece of paper saying, yeah, I mean, look, we wrote it down. But is that a satisfying way to conclude a project? Absolutely not.
No.
Right. So one thing I think is very important is expectation management.
I think that we could rename this whole episode.
Expectation management, yes.
Process mining and the importance of expectation management.
Correct.
I mean, I think we could rename this whole podcast, my whole life, the whole world.
Oh my God.
Make it as immediately as big as possible. Everything is about expectations and how you set them, how you manage them, how you update and maintain them is critical. And especially for process mining, that is 100% critical. Is that then the segue into...
It is a little bit of a segue.
Into the next project phase, which in fact, I would say are two project phases, the implementation and validation phase, which is where we take pretty much the details collected from scoping and we start actually setting it up. Oftentimes during these phases, there's additional meetings that would happen on a weekly or twice a week basis where we're saying, hey, what about that? This part doesn't really make sense. Can you give us some more information? And we're chugging along, implementing, setting it all up. And validation, where then we hand over this MVP or to some level of finished product. Again, expectation. And we, because I've heard MVP is like an 80% solution. Yeah.
I've heard MVP being a 60% solution. I've heard MVP being 95% solution. So it kind of depends on what you who you ask.
I've also heard that the expectation is everything should be perfect.
That's
when you hand it
true.
over and for validation.
I heard there shouldn't ever be validation because it should be perfect.
Oof.
Yes. Literally when we were going through a project and the things that we wanted to deliver was validation, like 3 weeks of validation to check everything. And it was declined because they said it should be perfect from the start. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you just say so, then we know.
Exactly. Oh, you wanted us to do it perfectly. Oh, I'm so sorry. Our normal thing is to put in mistakes on purpose.
Yeah. Yes. Expectations.
Expectations,
critical.
yes.
And I think that is the perfect segue to one of the main challenges, which is expecting 100% perfect on everything and not allowing your tool to be used or acceptable without having every single tiny detail perfect to a T.
Yeah.
And I've seen this many times. I've seen projects that were scheduled to last 8 or 9 weeks go for 4+ months.
Yeah.
Because every single tiny detail that you would never really even put in your scoping, you wouldn't put it in a delivery document because it's so small. Then they say, no, well, without that, we can't use it. Without this one filter, the entire dashboard is not usable.
Yes.
And then it just never ends. And I think
drags on and on and on.
And then your costs go way higher than was planned. You're not actually using the tool that you wanted to make a big impact with. And you're, again, losing momentum with the project as a whole. So ultimately, having this expectation of what do I need to address the problem? It's all connected.
Yeah.
What do I need to actually solve this problem? Do I need that filter for this to be at all usable? If it's not there, can I still get something out of this dashboard? Probably.
Most likely, yes.
And can we get the dashboard to an 80% point where we can start using it, do something with it, and then come back with a whole bunch of change requests? Because there always are some. Even if you think it's 100% invalidation, I guarantee that after 3 months of working with a tool, you will have tons of more ideas, if not things that are wrong or incorrect in it that you found, or things that could be better, or a whole other idea of what you want to do with process intelligence. Once you solve one problem, you find another.
Which is also a very good sign, actually.
Yeah.
If you think about it, when you start or when you onboard new users or something, they don't know anything about process intelligence, or maybe they know something, right? But to use it for 3 months or something, you start to understand its capabilities.
Yeah.
You start to find yourself and find your process inside this tool again. And then these things start to make a lot more sense to you. And then you're thinking, wow, I can do this. What could I also do the X, Y, Z? Right? And then, you start to align the way you think about a problem in a whole new tool.
Yeah.
And that I think is very powerful.
There's the expression to how do I convert it to process mining? To use a process mining tool is to know a process mining tool. And to know a process mining tool is to love a process mining tool.
Wise words, Lindsay strikes again. Yeah, I'm not sure I would go so far as to say loving a process mining tool.
As much as one can professionally appreciate a technology.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think that, yeah.
Well,
sure.
We'll stick at, we can cut it short to say to use a process intelligence tool is to know a process intelligence tool. Yes. And the more that you know it.
The loving is optional.
Yeah, the love is optional. If you do love process mining, come do it 40 hours a week.
It's fun.
And if you don't, then...
Don't. No one's forcing you.
Then why are you listening to this podcast?
Yeah, we still love you even if you don't like it.
Then keep getting to know it, and then you will know.
Yes.
So I think then the solution for this stems all the way back to our scoping, which is define the problem and how you're going to solve it, or define the problem at its core, not necessarily a solution. Because if you define a solution, then it might not actually be what you need. But if you define a solution being like this chart and these buttons and these KPIs, if you define your problem and how you want to solve it, how you need to address this problem, then you're much more likely to bring something in the end that hits the mark. Whereas if you go solution first, all the way from what are we doing process mining for? If you have a problem that you're looking to solve and you know how that problem works, you can identify it, you can draw a line around it if you were to draw it out in a schema. All of these things make your connection to how you address that problem much clearer and more effective. And you might then have a solution, a dashboard, an operational app that does a whole bunch of things. But if it doesn't hit the mark in a way that's meaningful, then you're never going to be at 100%. And there's always going to be something else.
Yeah.
So I think that is then how you define your problem, how you define your solution, and what you expect from where do we close this? What is 100%? What is 80%? And what's going to be effective for us to make a difference, to make an impact in what we're actually working on.
So true. Mic drop.
Beautifully stated. To love process mining.
The tool.
The tool. I think that's also a great segue to the next point, which also comes up during our implementation and validation, which is exactly what you said of if you don't know how it works, then it's going to be really difficult for you to use it. And that comes up primarily in the validation phase.
Yes.
Where we now are handing over our MVP, whatever level of perfect.
The 95% MVP.
Is. And then we take our baby and we say, here you go. Please review it and let us know if it meets your expectations. Let us know if it's correct. Compare it to the data you have in SAP to make sure the currency conversion is correct. The right data is there. The numbers add up. If your annual revenue is 4 billion and it's showing 50 trillion, then, you
might have a problem.
There's some things to look at.
I mean, the 50 trillion, I think we could spot that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's, that's maybe an extreme case. Ideally, we do spot that before we hand it over for validation, but there's some things that are less like egregious errors that might pop up. And that's where the validation team needs to be ready and available. And this is a big cause of challenges for us in a lot of our projects where everything can be trucking along, working really well, and then you get to validation and you hand it over and you either don't get feedback or you don't get a response at all, which has happened, of getting ghosted, left on red in validation phase. That can be a real challenge. So if you're underestimating your resources required, if you're underestimating the preparation that you need on your side for appropriately validating a solution, this is a way for your project to go wrong. If you've never used Celonis before and you were supposed to do these trainings and then you never really had time to do the trainings and then you're told to validate it, but you don't know what to click on, you don't know if you're supposed to click.
What does anything mean?
What am I looking at? You're not going to do a very good job at validating.
How can you even?
It's if you don't know process mining, how do you validate it?
And this also ties back in to, I think, point number 2, executive buy-in, right? So many times I've heard the users say, we just don't have the time. We have our daily work that we still need to do. And on top of that, we have to now go through this tool and just that we don't have time to train on. We don't have time to go through all this list and things like that. And having the executive buy-in to buy that amount of time, giving the users a reasonable amount of time to do that work can be tricky.
Yeah.
And also a lot of times this fails. Like you said, we get left on red. Just because, not because they don't care, they just don't have the time. Right?
Yeah. So that's where your big boss, Patrick, comes in and says, if you don't, no, we imagine big boss Patrick is probably not as authoritarian, but says, hey guys, this is really important. I need you to make sure that your other projects are willing to accommodate the time that you need. And that is a key part to make sure that people actually do it. Usually also what we do now as a critical part of a project is communicate from our side what we expect the needed resources from each of the different roles in a project will look like according to our project plan. So this is something that we spend a lot of time on, of preparing this, what we will do at what point in the project so that our partners, our collaborators can have their resources also planned accordingly. And that, I think, also helps. But plans change. And just because it's a plan doesn't mean that everyone always does it. And this can be a major breakdown of a process mining project. It can be a breakdown that validation never ends because it takes a really long time to get that feedback. Or maybe even worse, validation is concluded. No problems are reported.
Yeah.
You give your implementation team a high five because you say, wow, you guys delivered perfect.
On point.
And then a few weeks go by and then you realize, actually, this is all wrong.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, probably worse than...
I've been on projects where we entered validation phase. We had finished implementation and users were asked to validate.
Mm-hmm.
Then I opened the change log, see nothing's logged.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay. Must have been a really good implementation, of
Hair
course.
Flip, yeah.
And then this keeps going on. A couple of weeks go by. And then I'm invited to a Q&A with the users, right? Just to if they have any open questions, they just get them out. Maybe they just didn't want to log an issue or something, just to have that dialogue. Enter the meeting. And then they talk about the thing that I built in they say, where's the link to it? Can I share my screen? And then somebody links this person the thing. Turns out they had never even signed up for the platform.
Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, I need a user account for this?
Literally, then we were watching this person set up their tool for the first time. And I'm like, okay, it makes sense why I haven't been getting any feedback because no one's just been able to or just hasn't done any validation yet. And I was like, I thought this was going so well and I did it perfectly, but turns out it was too good to be true.
Yeah. And then that can really can throw off the plan.
Yes.
And the added value of your solution at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, so because with our two glass full perspective, our ways to resolve this are, I think we've hinted at them, but to run it down explicitly, executive buy-in to clear out the availability of all your people, to make sure they prioritize the time. If trainings are provided, do them. If you're worried about your team not having the time and resources, the availability for it, or that people have too much going on, it is an option that we can do an on-site live training so that you're doing it together as a group. Everyone sits down and is more or less focused for a couple of hours in a workshop in order to make sure that you are figuring out how to use the tool. We can also do on-site validation workshops.
Yes, we can.
Where then you hackathon style, everyone sits in a room and does it together. That's another great way to really force and accelerate as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, going through it.
Yes.
One of the fastest validations I had was 2.5 days long. I think we started midday on a Wednesday and we finished validation on Friday. Nice. And was it 100% perfect? No, it wasn't. But it was definitely more than 80% covered. And that then became this gold standard for this organization who had then many other follow-up projects, and validation continued to be a problem. And they always said, but it was perfect in that first time. Why didn't we have this issue when we did it the first time? Because we had this really hard and fast, this aggressive validation phase, but it was so effective in not letting the project timeline derail.
Yeah, so maybe that's another lesson.
Yeah.
Dedicate time, and not just an hour here or there, but a full day on site. The nice thing about on site things is that it gets everybody so focused.
Yeah,
that's why I love doing hackathons when we do them.
Yeah,
because everyone's focused on the same thing. Everyone's sitting down. You're in a room. It's stinky. It's stuffy, but everyone's kind of focusing. Everyone's buzzing and things like that. And you'd be surprised how much you can get done.
It's the people to people motivation.
Yeah.
Once again, it's all about expectations. It's all about people. Cool. So now we've finished validating our beautiful tool.
Yes.
And we've gotten input from the end users. It's looking good to go. And now we're at the point where we have this really cool app and we are getting ready to roll it out, to send it out into the corporate world to gain all the value that we ever dreamed it would.
Off the assembly line.
Exactly. But you're still not in the clear.
No.
There's still some challenges, and you can still fail. Even if you've made it this far, there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yes, just because you managed to implement everything that the users wanted and have the project checked off and all these things, now you're putting it live. What's the one thing that you need to do? Make sure that the tool is actually being used effectively.
Mhm.
Adoption, governance. Are they doing it correctly? Are they doing it at all?
Yeah.
You know,
So monitoring,
onboarding new people, right?
Then we can say the way to fail is by not having a plan for adoption and governance, monitoring, maintenance, all of these things. If you're not thinking about the complete end-to-end life cycle of your tool, of your product, whatever it is, then there is a big risk that it won't reach its full potential.
And that's exactly where COEs come in.
Mm-hmm.
They're a tremendous help.
Yeah.
I think when we had a podcast about the importance of COEs and the failure rates between process intelligence initiatives, between having a COE and not having a COE is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like COEs are so dramatically important.
I guess it's then just being there to kind of push it forward.
Yes.
To not let things fade away into the background, to make sure that it's continuing to run with change management,
yes,
with onboarding. If there's restructuring, that nothing falls through the cracks.
Data changes, right? IT's doing stuff,
Mm-hmm.
new source systems get added, old ones get deprecated. All these things need to be maintained, right?
Yeah. Or even, I think, I don't even have it in my list of notes, but it is critical, value tracking.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that is a key part of what happens after your rollout, is now measuring and tracking the impact of your tool, whether that's a explicit euro value or any sort of monetary value, whether that's time and savings, efficiency, whatever it is. How are you going to be measuring on an ongoing, sustainable basis what your tool's doing?
I will also say, like, this should already be part of your scoping.
That should be from the beginning.
Yeah, right.
That is,
you should be building solutions that have an impact that you can measure, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the best of cases, right?
Ideally.
Yeah.
And like, wow, did we really not have that? And it's one of the main things to do in our scoping. That I think is critical. And I've talked to many people, I think we've had guests on the show that are saying value first. Like, we're not going to talk about the solution. We're not going to talk about the project.
Show me the money.
Yeah, where's the money? Money on the table. And then we'll get into it.
This ties back to point number 1, transparency. What's the value?
What's the value?
Track it. You can't. Yeah, I dare you. Go on then.
I'm like, sounds like a challenge.
Yeah.
FTE cost?
Of
time spent trying to figure out what's going on.
And that's measured how?
Assumptions?
I'm sure you can make some sort of assumptions.
You can make some assumptions,
yes, but it's...
they're not going to hold up with controlling.
No.
Yeah, so then your plan for value should be from the beginning.
Yes.
Ideally, before you start an operational use case or looking at even an analytical use case, to have your eyes on the prize. Where are we going?
Yep.
What does that look like? And how are we going to measure it?
To eventually justify to somebody about why we have created this COE or why we have these maintenance costs or why we are bothering with implementing change requests and all these things. All those things cost money. Or you have to justify it somehow.
Even to go on stage with a big number behind you on a big screen to say, we saved millions.
That's your dream.
That's my dream.
Yeah.
It's not everyone's dream.
No.
Interesting. Anyway, value, monitoring, adoption, governance, ownership, all of these things. What happens after the project is done? What are we actually going to do with it in the first 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, year, and so on? What does that look like? And how are we going to keep it up to date as our systems change, as our strategies change, and so on? And how are we going to make a plan for that? So then that brings us to our final
The final point.
The final point, which is not having an appropriate knowledge base, not having the appropriate expertise, whether that is internal resources for your team or having an external partner.
This is the part of the show where we like to say this podcast is sponsored by Process and no jokes, but it is critically important.
Yes.
I think one of the earliest episodes that we ever recorded, we partners like our company Process End are likened to a digital Sherpa that can take you through the wilderness that is a new tool, a new way of thinking, a new way to look at the things you're doing, tackling strategic problems. So with our services, with our company, we have seen a lot of things in a lot of places, touched a lot of source systems, seen a lot of ways how to use it successfully, ways of seeing how to do it not successfully, right? So I don't want to speak too highly of us because I think it's a little bit... I don't like doing it, but we are very good at what we do. And one of those things is informing the people that we work with on what our best ideas are on how to help them overcome problems, tackle these issues that they're facing. And that can be vital in figuring out how to get the most out of it, right? Because we've seen these things fail. That's why we were doing this episode. We've seen people fail in these circumstances. So we know, like, if we say, that's a good idea eventually, but I think we should focus on something else.
Yeah.
That's not because we just want to crap on your idea or anything, but probably because we've seen it.
Freaks.
Yeah, exactly. Because we've seen it before. We know where this road will lead, most likely. Could also be that it doesn't, but we've been here before.
So I think from the lessons learned perspective, from just knowing your way around these kinds of challenges, what the technology looks like, I've been on, for example, a number of site visits where we walk around a manufacturing facility,
which is quite cool.
Which is very cool. I am a nerd for industrial engineering. I love a good assembly line, but I am always amazed by how much knowledge and experience it must take to build this, to create this masterpiece of often chaos when you look at it from the outside. And I am not an expert in building a manufacturing line. And I would do I could do it. I am confident in myself enough that I could build a manufacturing line, but I think it would not by hand. I think I could conceptually put it together at some point, but I would be much faster and much more efficient. It would be much less frustrating. Success, time to value would be much better if I had somebody who was an expert at doing it for the past 5 years supporting me in that journey.
Probably.
That's there. I can see you looking at me being like, where's this metaphor going?
Yeah, you lost me. But I'm back. I'm back now. I'm back.
If you're looking to do something that's very technical and niche, generally you want to have expertise there with you. So whether that is building up a kick-ass COE team where you have people working internally for your company that are then being that resource for you, that know how to use the tool, that are bringing the wisdom and experience to drive it forward, that's great. If you don't have those resources available for you internally, then getting a partner really is advisable because it is a game changer in terms of how quickly you'll get there in whatever form of collaboration that looks like. Whether that's Process And or a different consultancy.
No, it should be Process And for sure.
Thanks for hitting that one for me.
Yeah.
Having a good partner is then ultimately a great way to accelerate your process, make sure that you're delivering something of value and that your investment turns into a wild success so that you too can be on stage with
Not everyone. That's not everyone's dream, Lindsay. Let it go.
Just want to be on stage.
Yes, I know. You'll get there.
so that you can be reporting millions in savings, billions in savings,
trillions
in savings. Inflation's coming up, you know, to the board, and everyone will clap for you. And to do that, you need to have the experience.
It very much helps.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's impossible to do it by yourself, but it will be a struggle.
Yeah.
And the struggle can be lessened. May even not appear at all.
Yeah.
With our help.
Cool. So now we've gone through our 8 or so, more or less.
Yes.
Key ways that you can fail at process mining.
Which are not the only ones, let me be clear.
There's definitely more.
Also, dear listeners, if you have a failed process intelligence initiative and you would like to talk about it, please come on our show and tell your tale of where it went wrong, where you took a wrong turn, or where somebody else took a wrong turn. It doesn't really matter. We're not here to point fingers. But we'd love to hear from you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This was very fun to put together, to be honest. I hope you enjoyed listening. You can feel free to reach us on all the social media where we're listed. Feel free to send us an email at mindingyourbusinesspodcast@gmail.com or write us on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you.